In this section, we're going to go ahead and create the player script. We're going to start off and create a new script and attach it to the main player node. We're then going to go ahead and add all the variables to the script. After that, we're going to ensure to have all the functions for movement, aiming, player damage, attacking, and reloading. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and get started creating the player script. So this is going to be our first script for the player, which is basically going to be our main controller. So let's go ahead, select the player node, add a new script, make sure we're saving it in the correct location, the scripts folder, open, and hit create. Alright, first things we'll do is of course add all of our basic variables. So let's go ahead and start off with an @export. This will be a variable representing our current speed of the player. This will be a type float, and we'll simply equal it to something like 400.0. We can always change it later. Next up, we're going to go ahead and have a representation for each node within the player. So these are going to be a bunch of @onReadies. So we'll have an @onReady. This one will specifically be the idle sprite. And then simply just equal it to the current idle sprite we have under body. Drag and drop it in. Next up, do another @onReady variable, and this will be our attack sprites. Attack_sprites. And then we'll simply equal that to our current attack sprites node. Drag and drop it in. Next up, we'll go ahead, another @onReady var, and this will be our knife sprite, so knife_sprite. Simply equal that to our current knife sprite. After that, we're going to have one for our aim. So let's do an @onReady var, and we'll just call this muzzle for the aim, and simply equal that to our aim node. Drag and drop it in. Next up, we'll have another @onReady. This will be our variable, and this will be our shoot controller that we have below. And we'll simply just equal that to our current shoot controller. Let's keep going. Next up, another @onReady var, and this will go ahead. This will be our reload_timer, and we'll simply equal that to our current reload timer. Drag and drop it in. Next up, another @onReady var. This one here will represent our knife_attack_timer. And we'll simply go ahead, equal that to our knife attack timer. Next up, we'll go ahead, more @onReadies var. This one will represent our current hurting animation, so hurting_anim. And then, if you guessed it, go ahead, equal that to our current animation player, which holds the hurting anim. Nice. Next up, another @onReady var. This next one is going to be, let's see, we have a hurting timer next, so let's do that. Hurting_timer. And simply equal that to our current hurting timer. Next up, we'll have our hitbox, so @onReady var. And we'll just call this hit_box_area. And go ahead and simply equal that to our current hitbox area. Just right here, the area 2D. Next up, let's go ahead, create one for our camera now. So @onReady var. We'll just simply call this camera, and we'll do _shaker because we're going to add that shaker script. Just helps define it a little better. Let's equal that there. Looks good. Let's continue on. A couple more left. Let's go ahead. Create a constant. We'll call this zombie_damage. And we'll set the default value equal to something like 30. And we can always change that down the road, but I think it works pretty well with that. Next up, another constant. We'll go ahead, call this hurt_cooldown. This, of course, is going to represent the time in between getting hurt. So we're going to make this a float and go ahead, just equal that to 2.0 for 2 seconds. Next up, create another variable. This is going to be called is_vulnerable. I will do invulnerable. And basically this is going to go ahead, and when it is equal to false, that is when we can get hurt again. So we're going to be resetting that, of course, when the hurt cooldown goes out. And those are going to be all of our starting variables. So go ahead and make sure you got all those in. Remember, you can check the source code. Let's go ahead and get started with our first couple functions now. So let's start off with our first function, which is going to be our ready function. So let's go ahead, function_ready. So as we know, this is going to be everything that happens on start with the game. And we're just simply going to do a couple things, all right? We're going to go ahead and initiate that we are in the player group. So we can do that by doing add_to_group and then double quotes, all lowercase player. Next up, we're going to go ahead and set some things for the timers, starting with the reload timer. We'll do a dot wait time. Simply set it to our global dot reload time. All right, reload_time. And that's because, of course, we're going to change that reload time depending on which gun we're using. We're also going to go ahead, get our reload timer, dot one shot, and simply equal that to true. Below that, we're going to go ahead and get our knife timer now. Let's go ahead, dot one shot as well, and simply equal that to true. Underneath that, we're going to go ahead, get our hurting timer now. So hurting timer, dot wait time. And we're simply going to set this to our hurt cooldown value. Last thing we're going to do in our ready function, we're going to go ahead, again, hurting timer, dot one shot, and simply equal that also to true. And that's going to be everything we need in our ready function. Now you could do these also inside the functions or the timers themselves, but it's a little better to go ahead and do it inside the script just to make sure we're not forgetting anything. So let's go ahead. Next up, next function. This is going to be our physics process function, which we know is going to initiate any movement or any physics movement we want for the player. So first thing we're going to do though is we want to make sure that the game is on and not over. So how we're going to do that is have a simple if statement. That's going to be our safety check. We're going to say if global dot game over, if game over equals true, or if our global dot game on equals false. If it's either of those cases, then we're going to go ahead and simply do a return. So anything below this will not run. If that's not the case though, then we're going to go ahead and initiate some of those physics processes, such as a function we're going to create called rotate underscore towards underscore mouse. And we're going to create that, not right now, but for now we'll leave it in. We're also going to go ahead and create a new variable. We're going to call this input underscore vector. We're going to equal this to another function that we don't have created yet, which we're going to call get underscore input underscore vector. And all that's going to do is just get whichever direction we're currently going. Because again, we want to be able to go all up, down, left, and right, but we'll get to that in a bit. Next thing, of course, is once we have that input vector, is we'll set the new velocity equal to that input vector times the current speed we have for the player. To actually initiate the velocity, though, we have to use our pre-built function move and slide. Next up, we'll go ahead and get our shoot controller, and we're going to initiate a process within it. So we're going to do process underscore, and we'll just call it controller. Now again, we don't have this created yet, but we will. Just keep it as this for now. Next up, we're going to go ahead and do another function called handle underscore sprite underscore state. And we're going to create this in just a sec as well. This is going to basically just update which sprite is active, which one, like idle, attack, knife, and any others. Now let's go ahead. Next function though, we'll create that rotate towards mouse one. So we'll do function, and then if you want to, just copy the name, paste it, and then go ahead, do an arrow to void, And then within it, all we're going to do is get our variable for our mouse underscore position and simply equal that to our get underscore global mouse position. Okay. Once we have that, which is going to be an x and y value, we go ahead and we set look at mouse position. That's a pre-built function that all it does is just rotate it towards whichever value we pass in. So save what you got currently. Let's continue on to our next couple functions. So let's go ahead and do our get input vector one. So I'm going to copy the name there. Let's go ahead, backspace function, paste the name, parentheses, and we're actually going to get an arrow void out of this. So let's go ahead, do arrow to a vector2, because remember we're returning a vector2 value, an x and y, so we can of course move towards that direction. So let's go ahead, close that up, colon. All right, so first thing we need to do is get the direction. So variable, we'll call it direction. And what we're going to do is just simply equal it to a empty vector2 dot capital Z 0. All right, nice. Then we're going to go ahead, make sure though, yep, we got the arrow there. Let me see, make sure that goes away. Function get vector2 arrow vector2. Doesn't seem to like my little function here. Make sure we have it as the same name. Let's see, handle sprite not found. Let's see if we get that out. Just want to make sure that our current one, not node paths, return value. Oh, that's because we do not have the return value. So whenever you have an arrow to vector2, we have to return a specific value back, which we'll get to at the end of this. So let's go ahead and continue on. Let's go ahead, and now we're going to do a couple if statements. We're going to say if input, and we'll do dot is action pressed. And we're looking for the UI write for this one. So go ahead, double quotes, UI write. And then we'll go ahead, colon, and we'll set our direction dot x plus equals 1. Okay, and now we just need to do this for each direction. So let's go ahead and copy this, paste it a couple more times below. So we have our UI right. We also need to do our UI left. So UI left. And then of course, UI down and UI up. So UI underscore down and then UI up. Okay. UI underscore up. Nice. And then for the values, UI right plus equals 1. This one's going to be minus equals 1 for that x. Now for these other ones, we need to do a dot y. So we'll do dot y plus equals 1. And then this one again, dot y minus equals 1. And then since we have a value now, we can return it. So that error will go away. We'll do a return. And then we'll do our direction dot normalize to just make it a whole number. Nice. Okay, now one thing to note though is these UI right, UI left, UI down, and UI up are going to use the arrow keys on your keyboard. Now I like to use the AWSD keys. So how can we set those? We can set those in our project settings. Go to project settings, go to input map, and then you're going to see this show built-in actions. Then you can go ahead and see all these other UI left, UI right, and anything you want. So if you want to put in the AWSD keys, you can. So for instance, the UI left would be the D key. So let's go ahead and add a new one here with the plus button, add event. Just select D key. Now you will initiate that with the D key, including the arrow key as well. So then we're going to go ahead to the other ones. Let's do the right. It's going to be the A key. Or actually, this one's going to be the D key. We need to switch those. So D key for this one. Let's remove the left one and re-add it. That's going to be the A key to go left. And then the up one, that's going to be the W key. So let's go ahead, add a new one in there. W key. Then down is going to be the S key. So now you can go ahead and use AWSD for movement also with the arrows. Let's close that. Perfect. let's go ahead and do our next function. That's going to be the handle sprite state. So let's copy the arrowed one right here. Let's go ahead, backspace function, paste that in. Okay, now to get started here, we need to do a couple things because we're going to have multiple states, specifically for the knife and the attacking ones, and of course the idle as well. So the first thing we'll do is get a variable. We're going to call this is underscore knife underscore attacking, and we're simply going to equal that to our shoot controller dot is underscore knife underscore attacking. Okay, and we don't have this value in yet because we don't have that script created, but we will in the near future. But that's going to get and make sure we have that. Then we're also going to have another variable, which is going to be called is underscore reloading. We're also going to go ahead equal that to not reloading timer dot is stopped, meaning if the reloading timer is active, then we'll go ahead and have that. And if it isn't, then we'll have it equaling false, okay? So basically this is just checking to verify whether or not we are reloading. Next thing we're going to do is also a variable, call it is underscore shooting, which we're going to get that from our input dot is action pressed. And we're looking for specifically the left click button, and I do not think we have that in there, so we're going to have to add that, which we can do in the same way we just did for the AWS keys of project settings, input map. But because this is one that does not exist, we can go ahead, close the show built-in actions, and create a new one, and just call it left underscore click. Simply add that in, and then choose what we want for it, so mouse buttons, and just look for the left mouse button and hit OK. Now if we go ahead and look for that, it should pop up. You'll see the left click right there. Perfect. All right, now we can have the if-else statements. This is going to, of course, make whichever sprites we want active, and the first thing we'll do is say if is knife attacking, and we're going to go ahead say if that equals true. Then we're going to go ahead inside of it, set our attack sprites dot visible equal false, but we are going to go ahead and set the knife attack sprite dot visible equals true, and also go ahead get the idle sprite dot visible equals false. Okay, and we need to do this one for each kind of state. So after the if, I'm going to do elif, and this time instead I'm going to say is shooting equals true, and we'll say is reloading equals true. Or actually, instead of and, we'll do or, because either or should activate that. So or. Then what we're going to do is simply make only the attacking one active. If we had a specific sprite for reloading, we would want this here for the reloading one. But because it's the same, I'm just going to keep it as is. So go ahead, false the knife one, but make the attack one true. Perfect. All right. Then the last one, of course, is going to be our idle position. So we'll go ahead and simply have an else. And then all we're going to do is copy the values above, paste it in below. This time, of course, we're going to set this to true for idle, but false for the other ones. And with that, it looks pretty good. Don't forget to give your colon up here. And there you go, your error should be gone. Let's go ahead now and do a simple function for our reload timer, which we can go ahead and we'll do function, and we'll just call this cancel underscore reload. And then we're going to go ahead, do an arrow to void. And all we're going to do in here is we're simply going to say if not is, where is that, is underscore invulnerable. We'll go ahead and do a return. And then we're also going to go ahead, or better yet, instead of this, actually, because we're just going to cancel the reloading, let's just say if not, there we go, reload timer dot is stopped. If that's the case, then we'll go ahead and simply do our reload timer stop, okay? And all that's going to do is a simple check to force it to stop reloading, because again, once we start switching the weapons or using the knife attack, we don't want this to go on anymore, okay? Nice. Let's continue on though. Next function we can create, let's do the take damage function. So let's go ahead and do function, and we'll do take underscore damage. And we're going to pass in a couple values here. So I'm going to say damage int, and then again, arrow to void. So we're going to pass it out, or passing it in this time actually. All right, then for this one, we're just going to do a couple simple things. First thing we're going to do, of course, is say if is vulnerable equals true. Then we're going to go ahead and do a return, because we don't want to get hit over and over again. We want to make sure the timing goes out. But that will say global dot player health minus equals damage. Then we'll go ahead and set our is vulnerable equals true. Then we'll do a simple hurting animation play. So hurting anim dot play. And the one we're going to play is going to be the hurting one. Then we can initiate the sound for hurting. So in our little sounds area, I'm just going to take the hurt, drag and drop it in there, and just do a simple dot play. Last thing we'll do, of course, is kick off the timer. So we'll go ahead, get our hurting timer, and do a simple dot play. Or actually dot start, because it's a timer, not an animation. Looks great. I know that was a lot. Remember, you can go ahead and look at the source code if you need to. Let's wrap up this script with two more functions. One for the area entered, and then another for, of course, timer out for hurting. Okay, so let's remove the extra spaces we have down here, because we are going to connect a signal. So we are going to do the area entered. So go ahead, select your area 2D. As you remember, this is going to be for our hitbox. So select it, go to node, signals, area entered, and let's go ahead, connect it to the correct script. Should see this new area down here. All right, so we're going to add a couple things in here. Let me make it bigger so we can see it all. So first thing we're going to say is if our area dot is underscore in underscore group, is in group, and we're looking for specifically the group of zombie, okay? So if we interact into a zombie, then we'll say and not is vulnerable, because we want to make sure that is off. So is underscore is invulnerable, and global dot game over equals false, because if the game ends and we're still getting attacked, we don't want to keep getting hurt and shaking the screen or anything like that. We just want it to not affect, okay? But with that, we'll say if, make sure we're on the same line. So if, and we'll say camera shaker equals true. Then we'll go ahead and initiate our camera shaker dot start shake, which again, we don't have this function in there yet. We will create it, but that will initiate the shaking camera. We're also going to pass in some values for the intensity of the shake, and we'll just do something like 8.0, comma, make sure you have 8.0, not this comma, and then comma, 0.2, okay? Again, this function does not exist yet, but we will create that in the next section. But all that's going to do is just initiate the shaking of the camera, okay? So that'll start. We're also going to have another. We're going to say if our global dot, we'll say our player health is less than or equal to 0. If that's the case, then all we're going to do is set our global dot game over equal to true, because we have now lost the game. And because we've lost the game, we don't want anything else to happen, so do a return, okay? Now, if that's not the case, and we can still take damage, then we're going to run our take damage function, and then, of course, pass in the zombie damage value. Nice. And that's going to be everything for our area 2D, okay? Now, for our final function, we're going to initiate the signal for the herding timer, okay? So let's go ahead, select our herding timer, go to timeout, select the player. We'll clean this part up a bit, just so we can see it a little better. All right, let me go ahead, clear the pass, add some enters. Now, the first thing we're going to do when the herding timer goes out is we're going to have to go ahead and say if our global dot game over, if that equals true. Okay, if it does, then all we're going to do is return, because again, we only want to get hurt once before we die, and then that's it. We don't want any other shaking going on, any other animations playing, nothing. But if that is not the case, then we're going to go ahead and set our is invulnerable back to false. We're also going to go ahead, set our herding animation dot play back to what it was at idle. And then we're also going to go ahead, create a new variable, and I'm going to call this overlapping areas, okay? And this is just going to kind of help the effect of it. And we're simply going to equal this to our hitbox area. And I'm going to do dot get overlapping areas. And then for that, we're going to do a simple loop. All right, we're going to say for area in overlapping areas. So for each one, we're going to say if that area dot is underscore in underscore group of zombie, which we know is going to be tagged. If that's in the zombie group, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to say if camera shaker equals true, and we're going to say camera shaker dot start shake. Okay, start shake. And again, pass in those same values, 8.0, comma, 0.2. And then pass the if right there, take damage, pass in the damage we have, zombie damage. And then go ahead, do return. Now, why are we doing this specific loop? Okay, this specific loop is because if we are getting attacked by a zombie and we stay in its overlapping area for longer than the hurt timer, then we get hurt again, okay? So this is a nice little effect that if we just like stay inside that enemy, it won't stop hurting. It continues to hurt until, of course, we die if we're standing in the zombie's area. So again, this is like a little safety net just to make the game a little more realistic, okay? Nice. But that's everything though. So make sure you got it all down. Make sure to check the source code if you need to, no worries. Let's save what we got here. Go back to 2D view. Let's close up some things here. Make it look nice for now. And again, save what you got.